Welcome back to Law and Crime. We pivot now to Idaho for the trial against defendant Chad Daybell, who's accused of the triple murder of his wife, Tammy Daybell, his current wife's children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Now, this is very similar to the trial of his wife, Lori Vallow, as they both believe that the end of times was approaching and that the only way to save their souls was to eliminate them. Now, court is in session, but they will be resuming on Tuesday. They're not in session right now. And yesterday, the defense rested their case. Let's look back and listen to what the defendant's children, Emma Murray and Garth Daybell, had to say.
Her health started declining. I was really worried about it. Well, she'd always been one to be able to meet the demands of daily life without being exhausted. And she started going to bed at before dinner some nights. It would be like 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. And she would sleep in too if given the opportunity. So suddenly needing to sleep a lot was very confusing.
Now, there's been some discussion about your mother training for a 5K race. Do you have any information about that?
I was training for a 5K race, but she was not.
Okay, and why do you say she was not?
I invited her to run with me and she told me no, and that she never would.
Okay. Did you hear anything or any indication that there was any kind of sound or struggle?
I heard nothing.
And then at early in the morning at some point, you were awoken. Is that right?
Yes. I heard my dad saying, Garth, get up. I need help.
Okay.
And I got out of bed and ran over to help.
And then when you walked into your parents' bedroom, what exactly did you observe?
I observed my mother had rolled partially out of bed with her legs entangled in the sheets. And my instinct was, oh, she needs help. So I immediately grabbed her by the shoulders and lifted her up back into the bed.
Now let's listen to defense witness Dr. Kathy Raven. Defense attorney John Pryor asks about what could have led to Tammy Daybell's wife. Take a listen.
And would you agree that the toxicology report, at least according to your report that you provided, indicates that it was an extensive toxicology report?
Yes, it was a very extensive toxicology examination. They did extensive testing.
Okay. And at this point, there is always the possibility something could have been missed in the toxicology, correct?
Correct. So we just can't send a blood sample to the lab and say, look for anything and everything. We have to tell them what to look for. So most of the things we have are in a panel. We're really looking for, again, illicit drugs. If you're looking for things specifically like poisons and other things, you have to tell them which one to look for. They just don't they can't just randomly look for it. But they did extensive testing looking for several poisons and drugs.
So at this point, aside from the extensive testing, unless it was something unusual, the likelihood is that this wasn't the result of any kind of a poisoning, correct?
More than likely. It would be funny they couldn't detect anything. And there's always things we're not going to be able to detect, and the embalming does interfere with some testing, but nothing that they tested for was positive, so it would be unlikely.
Dr. Christensen came to the conclusion that this was homicide, and your conclusion is different, obviously. Is that correct?
Correct.
And as far as the explanations of the possibilities of what potentially could have caused the death without any physical signs of any structural or physical damage, what would those include?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The causes of death that could have resulted from this. They could include a seizure, is that correct?
Yes.
They could include arrhythmia, is that correct?
Yes.
They could include asphyxia, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there really any certainty to know what was the cause of death of Tammy Daybell?
No, because all those, plus, again, if there's some toxicology that we didn't pick up on, can cause death without leaving any signs.
Now, is it standard practice when there's no signs and there's no indication of what could have caused the death to take a jump to asphyxia? Is that what would be the common practice?
In my opinion, no. The way I practice and the way I've always taught people to practice in the institutions I've been associated with, again, we would call them undetermined. It's not, we do get cases where we don't find anything. We don't jump to conclusions or speculate. We just say these are things that might have happened. We don't know, so we're better left calling it undetermined. Other people might practice differently.
Okay. But in your opinion, there's no conclusion that could be drawn in this particular case.
No, there was no scientific evidence of a cause of death.
All right, Catherine, let's break down what the doctor had to say. First of all, that's John Pryor. He is the defense attorney, and he's trying to say, look, Tammy Daybell was not murdered by Chad. And in fact, Kathy Raven, this forensic pathologist, is explaining these causes of death. And I think actually Pryor is doing a decent job of trying to show that, look, first of all, it's not 100% clear, but she wasn't poisoned and she could have just passed away and your heart stops beating and, you know, this is the way she died. How do you think Kathy Raven did on that stand?
Kathy Raven seems to be a good witness in terms of how she's coming across as credible and explaining well. And you're right, the defense attorney is really trying to point out that there is a reasonable doubt as to how she died. That's why she's there to first establish that there was no evidence of poisoning, and that asphyxiation may or may not have happened. Because even if it happened, there might have been other reasons that could have caused her death. That's why they were listing it out. Because as we know, asphyxiation was the cause of death that was ruled out when her body, that was told to be the cause of her death when her body was exhumed. And I also like how she said that the embalming and obviously when they had to exhume her, all of that affects their report afterwards. So it raises questions as to whether or not Chad Daybell actually killed Tammy Daybell.
Exactly. And, you know, you just have to have one juror who has a little bit of doubt about how Tammy died. And don't forget, we've had the children on the stand. So I think he has raised some doubt. Will it be enough is the question. Okay, we're going to take a break. But when we come back, we'll have a look at some of the state rebuttals. So stay tuned.